Hi everyone, this is Flor Frances, and I'm the host of The Making Of, a show where we explore the story behind some of the albums we love.
Quite like it. We were quite sure that we'd made a great album, but obviously when it first came out, people weren't saying it was great. People were going, well, you might sell a few 100,000, you might do okay. But once it had reached maybe 5 or 6 years old and it was still selling, we were starting to say, see, we told you it was a great album and it will stand up. And even today.
On today's show, I talked to Mike Score, frontman and composer of A Flock of Seagulls, the iconic band behind the 80s hit I Ran So Far Away. I got a chance to talk to Mike a few days before a show he was playing in Florida, where he currently lives. He shared insights behind the recording process of their debut self-titled album that was released over 40 years ago, and key moments behind the writing of his most popular songs. Take a listen. Your first album that turned 40 last year is a timeless album. How do you see that record now when you look back at it? And you guys did a remastered version, so I'm sure you had to listen to it again, probably a few times.
It's a really strange feeling that when we did that album, we kind of knew there was nothing else quite like it. We were quite sure that we'd made a great album. But obviously when it first came out, people weren't saying it was great. People were going, well, you might sell a few 100,000, you might do okay. But once it had reached maybe 5 or 6 years old and it was still selling, we were starting to say, see, we told you it was a great album and it will stand up. And even today, it still stands up. And because it's being remastered and stuff like that, we kind of look at it like a child. We had a child 40 years ago, and now that child is standing up straight and proud of himself. And that album is still considered to be a great album of the 80s. In fact, almost, iconic album. The things we did at the time, we didn't know they were going to be still recognized today. We just did what we wanted because we were lucky enough to have a record company that basically just said, we're behind you, do what you want. So, we dressed as we wanted, we played the game as we wanted, we wrote music the way we wanted, and we had a great time out on the road and doing things and playing the songs, and great time with fans. It is very weird, though, to look back 40 years and go, wow, do you remember doing that? And it was 40 years ago, and it's still, people are still saying, what about your hair? What about Iran? Space Age is great, and it's just a very strange feeling. We expected it to last 2, 3, 4 years at the most. And that's why I say after about 5 or 6 years, we all started laughing and saying, wow, what did we do? It was great.
Yeah, and even it was rare for a band at the time to break into the American market with a debut album, right?
Yeah, but I think one of the things that helped us was that we were not afraid to come to America and play a lot of live shows, whether they were big shows with the Police or small shows to 100 people in a club where we went on at 3 o'clock in the morning. We loved all that. We loved America. We loved the whole rock and roll scene here. And we weren't afraid. I think a lot of bands were afraid that if they came to America, they wouldn't be seen as, being cool anymore, But we thought this is our chance to come to America, have a great time, show people our music, show people what we can do. And especially, in those days, the college kids, they were party animals. So they showed us how to party in America, and we had an amazing time, And the music just kept going, so it was even better than we thought.
And how was it? Also, like you were just saying that you were very lucky to have a label that supported your ideas and your looks that were a very strong part of what helped with the rotation of your videos and stuff like that. How
Yeah.
did you get signed for your first album?
Well, we tried. We probably tried 20 or 30 record labels. We would go to London and we would take our demos, and we would just get no. Because they didn't understand what we were. We were, you could say, we were ahead of our time, if you want. But most record companies are looking for bands that already have a hit. Then they don't have to work so hard. But our record company was a brand new record company, Jive Records, and they basically we're a new record company. We want something new. So they found us, or we found them, and it was, we met each other. Everybody got along, and it was simply a case of, okay, if you'll do what you say you'll do, we will do what we say we'll do. So everybody trusted each other to go forward. And we made the album. They had a great studio. They had a great attitude to pushing the band, and they kind of knew what the band was after, as far as not so much say recording, but as promotion and stuff like that, how we looked and stuff. They had an idea how to market that, and of course that was their side of the bargain. Our side of the bargain was to be ourselves, to create something that no one else had. And once they got it into the right position to be marketed, and it became visible, basically, MTV and stuff like that, I think it kind of was self-promoting.
Yeah, it started like a snowball effect.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you recorded that album, it was at the Battery Studios, right?
Yeah, Battery Studios in London, yeah.
Nice. And how was the recording process? Did you guys record it like live, or how was that?
It was the first time we'd been in the studio to record anything big. We'd done demos before. We'd been in 8-track studios and stuff like that. But this was a real professional studio. So at first we were a little bit lost. But once we got to know the people that were working in the studio and doing the recording, they helped us with our confidence, and we played live in the recording room. And over a couple of weeks, we got better and better, and then they started to do the takes. So, like the drums were live, the guitars were live, and then it was a case of just, tidying everything up. Mike Howlett, who was the producer, he basically let the band do its thing, but kept us in line, so we didn't go off crazy. Because, his job is to provide the record company with an album that sounds good and is listenable, so he kept us in line. He gave us ideas, but he never tried to take over what we were doing. He always allowed us to try what we wanted to try. He never crossed into, the songwriting or anything like that, because I think he saw what we were, and I think he also saw that given the chance, it would be successful. And so recording became, like happy times, I think it took us about 2 months altogether, as far as I can remember. And when the mixes were being done, we were all smiling because it sounded so much better than we thought it could ever.
That's amazing. So you were like basically the producers and the studio completed your vision with the song.
Right? Yeah, they understood, what we were after, and because we were really non-musicians. None of us had learned to play or been trained. They guided us very gently into areas that we didn't really understand, but then it suddenly, if you do this and you do that, it's going to sound a little bit better. So we were glad to get um, some pointers, stuff like that, especially on the synthesizers and stuff like that. Um, Nobody can really teach you what a synth can do. It's all experimentation. So we experimented.
Yeah, and at the time it was a pretty like newish instrument to incorporate
Yeah.
in a band. So it's not like now that
Yeah.
people will go and see what you guys did and like what Kraftwerk did and like depending their influences. But
Yeah.
and so you guys formed in Liverpool, but the studio was in London. Did you move to London at the time, or while you were recording, where were you staying?
Yeah, we stayed down in London to do the recording because basically we lived at the recording studio. The record company owned a couple of houses right next to the studio. So, we lived there, which meant actually we could work night or day. It depended on if we wanted to work till 3 in the morning and everyone was up for it, that's what we could do. Also, if we wanted to finish at 2 in the afternoon, we could do that and go to bed and catch our sleep and stuff like that. It was also right there with the record company offices, which meant that we could go over and talk to the record company people about what was going on, what interviews maybe, photo sessions, any news about what was going on with the band. I mean, it was like a wide open field. It didn't feel like there was anyone hiding anything from us. Everything we wanted was available. It was like I said, it was like happy days. We were just glad to have a record company and an album deal, and of course we didn't know what would happen after that. It was all just a case of let's do it and go forward.
Yeah, and you were telling me at the beginning of the interview that all the songs still live in your head constantly, and you think about how to improve them or change things, fix things. I know these are songs that you wrote over 40 years ago, but do you still have anything you want to change from the things that were recorded at the time?
Well, I play synthesizers, right? So in those days, synthesizers were not what they are today. So there's plenty of times when I mess about with the synthesizer and I go, oh, wow, I wish I had that sound, way back in the 80s. Then I could have put that in. And at some point, maybe a re-record album with those new sounds in, maybe slight readjustments and variations. But, that's the kind of thing I mean. It's kind of like, oh, wow, now this synthesizer does a really good sweep, I could put that right there. It would be more dramatic. Or I could say I could mellow out there. I think at the time, what we did with what we had was quite amazing, We always tried to use sounds that we made, not just patches that were in the synth. So I think we did pretty good for new kids.
Yeah, 100%. You even won a Grammy, right? For
DNA, yeah.
For DNA, yeah, that it was instrumental.
Yeah.
But tell me about that song. Like, how did you write it? How was the writing process?
That song came about because I think Frank and I were early to rehearsals. So I switched my synth on, I started messing about, and Frank picked his bass up and started messing about. And he said to me, I think he said something like, oh, that sounds good. What is it? And I said, the chords are D and A, right? So when Paul came up and Ali came up with drums and guitar, we didn't have a title. We thought, oh, it's a great, cool piece of music. I'll write some lyrics later on. So we just wrote on our songboard, we just wrote D and A, because that was the chords. And as that song developed, we would play it to warm up and stuff like that. It simply became D and A. And at the time, it seemed like a very technical, thing, because DNA was in the news a lot in those days. And so we just left it as DNA. And we weren't particularly trying to be clever, but later on, people said, that was great. How did you call that DNA? And we're like, just because the chords are DNA. It was that simple.
That's pretty awesome. And of course, we cannot talk about that album without talking about Iran. Did you ever imagine that it was going to become such a hit?
Not ever. No, well, I don't even think it was the kind of song that we were really trying to do. We toyed about quite a lot with rock, because you can get quite a lot of frustrations out playing rock rather than new wave kind of stuff. So I remember Iran we had as a piece of music that we just used to jam out to, until one day we were looking for a record deal in Liverpool, and we went to, I think it was Zoo Records, I can't remember exactly. We went to their offices, and on the wall they had a picture of two people running away from flying saucer. And that gave me an idea for the lyrics. So when we went back and started playing that song, I started singing the story of the two people running from a flying saucer. And the song then had the title, I Ran. I ran away from it. And then we just developed it. And then, we had ideas to make it quite rocky and quite heavy. And Paul came up with some great guitar parts and stuff like that. And a lot of it was yesing and knowing, we'd all be playing it. It'd be like, that part you played there, yes to that. And that other part, no to that. So that way you dissect your song and you find the parts that fit in and work. And after we'd actually finished Iran as writing it and got the lyrics, we kind of put it away for a while, because it wasn't really where we were going. But when we recorded it, it came to life. It really kind of stood out as a record company wanted to release it in America. And Mutt Lange, the producer of Def Leppard and all kinds of people, really, he came into the studio and he said, this song is a monster. It's going to be a huge hit for you. And he was right. He sat with us for some time and mixed it with us. And he was right. It became our standard song, the big song that everyone liked. To me, it's not the best song that we've ever done, but it was the biggest hit.
Which one is the best song that?
I think Space Age is a better song, and I think Wishing is a better song too. But they're in a slightly different format to Iran, whereas I think Iran caught the imagination of a lot of kids that loved guitar playing, and they didn't know how it would fit with synthesizers. But we managed to make the two play together, and I think that's why a lot of kids suddenly looked over and went, new wave doesn't have to be all synthesizers. It can rock as well. So I think in a way it was an early version of American new wave.
Yeah, that's true, because you were part of like the second wave of British invasion in a way, and that influenced so many bands that came after, so many American bands.
I think we opened the door for quite a lot of that.
This was the Making of podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe and give us a like. You can also follow us on Instagram at Too Much Love Magazine and visit our website, toomuchlovemagazine.com. This episode was hosted by myself, Flor Frances, produced by Too Much Love Magazine and Technique Records, edited by Diego Carrera. Until next time.